So, as usual, I'm very glad to be here and to see your faces and your names when I don't see your faces. But and I hope everybody's internet stays strong and healthy tonight, so that you can see so that you don't have to worry about that, I guess is what I'm thinking. But that's a transition too. I mean, so tonight we're going to talk about transitions. Essentially, that could be defined as just the passage from one state, one stage, one subject, one place to another. And saying that, you get the sense that we're always in transition. Everything's in transition. It's one way to look at our experience. The Buddha pointed us towards understanding of impermanence, and really that transitions is a different way of looking at impermanence. It's looking at how things are shifting all the time. Everything's in that nature. There is no permanent conditioned state of being. There may be, and partly what this talk is about, and partly what transitions are about, are being able to touch into groundlessness, because we're grounded in our habits and the way we do things and the way we see things and the way we experience things. However, at just about every level, from breath to breath, beginning of life to the end of life, we can connect with this experience of transition. This passage, and as I was doing with the meditation, just pointing you in the direction of experiencing, to the extent that it comes up in a meditation, where there's nothing to hold on to. You know, if we're really doing really good meditation and we're concentrated on the breath and we're going through the process of the breath, that's what we're asked to do. And the place people tend most likely in meditation to kind of fall off of that is in the space between the breaths, because there's nothing to hold on to. And when I teach a meditation class, I suggest people move their attention to their hands or to their feet or something to hold on to during that transition. And ultimately, we have the task or the challenge or the opportunity, really it's an opportunity, to let go of all of that and see what's there when we're not holding on to anything. So we'll do a little exercise with this again in a little while. And then when I open that up for discussion, if you had something that you noticed during the guided part of the meditation that's connected to that, you could let me know then too. So we can teach ourselves to focus on the gaps, and concentrate on the gaps and practice expanding them so that we can explore and investigate the space between. It's kind of like this parted curtain that we can experience in the parting of our routine, our regular way of responding to the moment and whatever we do to keep ourselves busy, or some would say to distract ourselves. So that's that curtain of habitual responses and ways of being conditioned, is the curtain that also could be called samsara, this wheel of of going round and round without really seeing the bigger picture. And with this opening, we can begin to see what the driving forces are that are perpetuating this running on the wheel. So I've been looking through all this writing I've done over years, and I came upon this little piece of journal writing that I did a little over a year ago. And because I think in terms of transitions, what we've experienced over the last couple of years or more has been one form of a huge transition. It's a transition that I don't know the truth of this, but I'm going to guess we could all say we've experienced some pretty big transitions in the last couple of years. It's hard to escape them, even if you wanted to. And then through at every level in the world, in the country, in our families, there's been these transitions. However, we were also, at least my experience was that I was kind of suspended in time for a while there. And so I was writing this little piece called Suspended in Time. Lately, this was a year ago. Lately, it seems like the days hang from the line like prayer flags, connecting one event to the next, each complete as it is strung up with its own story, bringing me closer to the next milestone. These days have abandoned drive or purpose. They simply evolve through routine and small discoveries. Trees and flowers beginning to awake from winter's dark cold, just as the world is awakening, for better or worse, from forced hibernation. On the horizon, dark clouds loom, as does the promise of delights. A newly diagnosed ailment, concerns for a loved one's well-being, a walk in the park, the caring presence of family and dear friends. I am old, and these points of connection increasingly are labeled illness and death. So many losses, and yet always, always the sweet, simple presence of today, softly transitioning into yet another beginning. So sometimes it's hard to talk about these transitions, and poetry and writing, and some things can get to them without too much, without words or concepts. So there's these big transitions, and then there are little transitions. So the transitions that are big have somewhat different qualities. They're stronger forces. They provide the opportunity for big leaps and openings. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is very strongly emphasized this period of time between death and rebirth that's called the bardo. And it's a gap. It's something that has ended and before something else has happened. And so metaphorically, this bardo can be used to describe times when our usual way of life becomes suspended, as I was just describing in the pandemic period that we've been through. As for example, during a period of illness or during a meditation retreat, we have that opportunity, then that experience of just kind of being there between things. And such times can be fruitful for spiritual progress, because all the external constraints diminish. I remember the day that the lot in 1920, when in March, when they first said everything was locked down to the extent that we did it in this country. And what the striking image for me is that I had a calendar with this week just filled with stuff one day, and the next day that calendar was empty, and everything was gone, everything was taken away. And it was jarring. It was kind of wonderful. It was kind of scary. It was kind of like, now what? And so, so that experience in various forms and various times can jar us into waking up. So, let's see, where was I? However, so they can be fruitful for spiritual progress because the constraints diminish. However, they can also present challenges because our less skillful impulses can come to the foreground. So we're greeted at these moments by our conditioning. In the face of groundlessness, the tendency is, to fear the unknown, and we find ourselves wanting often to retreat back to our habitual patterns and reliable routines. Except this practice, once we've gotten ourselves into it, we find, yeah, we want to do that maybe, but we know better. It's at some level we more and more know, and more deeply know that these conditioned responses aren't reliable, and they all have consequences. We don't have to give them up necessarily. We just have to know what we know and let that lead us. So we probably all have this experience of feeling that kind of discomfort in right this moment. There's nothing that we have to do, or in this moment where we're alone in the house, or we just have some reason that we begin to feel this little edge of fear or discomfort, or what am I going to do? And at that moment, we have choice. If we stop and say, what is this? And open our minds to this experience, we're letting ourselves contact what we know, what we've learned so far, that known part of ourselves, and we can let that lead us. But it takes trust, and it's a process that takes support from each other, from meditation practice, from choices that we make. So it's important to have the intention to be led by what we learn and know through this insight practice. Now, small transitions are in some ways are easier to be with, but they're also easier to slip right past without noticing. So we did this guided meditation tonight, and I don't know, did everyone stay totally with those gaps in the breath through the whole 30 minutes? No. But we gave it effort, but yeah, that's hard to do. So it's easy to just, but that is a way to work with it, is to watch the transition between the in-breath and the out-breath, and the moment of awakening, and the moment of falling asleep in the morning. So if you wake up, and this is a practice that with time you get better and better with, is just to ask this question: oh, what arrived with me with awakening? What is the climate of my mind? You know, you might have had a bad dream, you might have been startled awake by an alarm or just the sound of something outside. You might have woken very gently and feeling warm and good and the sunshine coming in your window. But observing that and noting that this is how I'm transitioning into this moment, and this is what I brought with me. And then the moment of falling asleep, which is really interesting. I don't remember what teacher it is that said this, you know, that was, I'm going to say Joseph Goldstein, because he's got a lot of these kind of moments, but don't quote me on that. That he went to see his teacher and he said how well he was doing with following all the moments. And then the teacher said, well, tell me this, did you go to sleep on an in-breath or an out-breath? And so that's how precise we can. And I've tried that on retreat. I've tried it and gotten close, but not there. But that idea of at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, as you open yourself to sleep, now what is my condition of my mind, of my body, of my experience, my senses, as I let go of this day, as I transition into sleep. So when I was looking at things and other things today, I found a poem that I was going to read. Maybe I will read the poem, but when I found it online, it had a preface, and I want to read you the preface, even more importantly than the poem, but maybe I'll read the poem too. This is by Tony Hoagland. And here's the preface. Spent most of last night and the wee hours just reading. We had a power failure that lasted for hours. And while everyone opted to pass the time by sleeping, I sat in the kitchen reading by candlelight. I burned 4 candles and finished 3 books. And in the silence that followed after everything burned out, I was thankful for the spaces between the full morning and night, where I can sit and listen to the clock ticking, to our listless dog pacing outside, and to the sound of my own breathing as I wait for everyone to wake up. I love that because sometimes I do that. I get up in the night and just go sit and just sometimes look out the window, sometimes just sit and enjoy the silence and the lack of stimulation. So I'll read you his poem here. Down near the bottom of the crossed out list of things you have to do today, between green thread and broccoli, you find you have penciled sunlight. Resting on the page, the word is as beautiful. It touches you as if you had a friend and sunlight were a present he had sent you from some place distant. As someplace as distant as this morning, to cheer you up and to remind you that that among your duties, let me read that over, to cheer you up and to remind you that among your duties, pleasure is a thing that also needs accomplishing. Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love, and love is no less practical then a coffee grinder, or a safe spare tire. Tomorrow you may be utterly without a clue, but today you get a telegram from the heart in exile, proclaiming that the kingdom still exists, the king and queen alive, still speaking to their children, to any among them that can find time to sit out in the sun and listen. So now I'd like to take a minute here, a couple of minutes, to just work with the transitions again, a little bit like we did in the meditation, but with a few different questions. So just to sit and connect yourself as best possible to this moment. The beginning of this moment, and ask yourself the question. And these are all questions that have no permanent answer. What is this? What is this moment? What is this? Can I relax in this opening, this transition, no matter what it feels like? Just for now? What does my body tell me right now in sensation, in contraction or expansion? What does my body tell me in this moment? Is there a feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, or somewhere in between, or both? Are there any mental pushes or pulls directing you away from resting in this moment and observing the experience of now? And if so, what do they look like or feel like? Can I trust just being in this moment without clinging to or rejecting it? Every transition involves letting go of something and opening to something new, something different. This is John O'Donohue. You can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. So taking a minute to just transition from being in this experience to transition back into being in this interaction or this time together. And if anybody has an observation on this or the earlier meditation experience of transition that you'd want to make right now, you're welcome to unmute yourself and speak. Okay. One of the things that interferes, obviously, with being totally at peace and open and aware in this moments of groundlessness, whatever happens, is our wanting it to be different. We have an idea of how the moment should be and how, and it might be that we don't want it to be different, so we want to keep with it, or we want it to be different immediately. So we want to control this transition, and we can direct our attention towards what feels healthy and right, but we can't control it, and it'll be what it'll be. Cheryl's internet will be what it will be, but we have our preferences for good reason. But so this is I think I read this a few years ago, but I don't know if it was here, but this is about Krishnamurti, the great Indian philosopher. I have my glasses, I guess I'll. So he's a spiritual teacher, and he was giving a talk at one point, and he was always trying to convey through words, which are content, that which is beyond words, beyond content, and that is the challenge. It's both the challenge for us having the experiences, and when we try to tell other people or even look for what exactly happens with this. Anyway, in one of his talks in the later part of his life, he surprised his audience by asking, do you want to know my secret? Everyone became very alert. Many people in the audience had been coming to listen to him for 20 or 30 years, and they still failed to grasp the essence of his teaching. Finally, after all these years, the master would give them the key to understanding. This is my secret, he said. I don't mind what happens. So that's all we have to do. It's not mind what happens. It's what that's talking about, of course, is the ability to be in tune with what is happening. So, you know, that phrase, how do I know it's supposed to be happening? Because it is happening. So that's the truth, you know, and when we can get it and give up the struggle to make it be different, to make it be some different thing, then we can have peace, which doesn't mean we don't do anything. I mean, a lot of people say, well, then there's nothing to do. Well, that's not true. So when we feel in line and in tune with what is happening, and with our wisdom, which develops with practice and age and all, and listening, just listening to spaciousness and silence, and listening for what feels like the truth. When we get that kind of centering, then we know what to do. There's a quote from Theodore Reski: I learn by going where I need to go. And so it's like, it's giving up the struggle and letting the paths and the truth lead us and trusting that. So ultimately, we have to see if we can not mind what's happening. Ultimately, we will all have the experience of transitioning out of this life. And the level of comfort with the uncertainty of that experience will have enormous consequences. It's enormous for us. It's probably enormous for what happens when we die. And it's enormous for those around us, for who are there with us or not with us when we die, to go through this. So a couple of times lately when I've talked, I alluded to the passage from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I'm going to read you, this is not the whole thing, this is just a little bit of it, but it's about the moment of death. And so here's how it goes. Remember the clear light, the pure, clear, white light from which everything in the universe comes, to which everything in the universe returns, the original nature of your own mind, the natural state of the unmanifest universe. Let go into the clear light. Trust it. Unite with it. It is your own true nature. It is home. So that's written about the moment of death, but it's also written about the moment of transition. If we can, when we find ourselves, for whatever reason and whenever we notice it, that we are in a state of groundlessness, of transition. We're not here, we're not there. We're here, but it doesn't have the story attached to it. We're just a being here, transitioning from one event, one vignette to the next. And if we can remember the clear light, remember the spaciousness, remember that we're all connected, that there's this openness, we will have the opportunity to be at peace. So I have one more poem, and this poem is a little different. It's one that I really love, partly because I lived in the Bay Area grew up in the Bay Area and lived there for a while, and know these places, but it's also about a transition or change. It's called Late Afternoons in June. The Fog Rides In, and it's by Robert Haas. Late afternoons in June, the fog rides in across the ridge of pines, ghosting them and settling on the bay to give a muted gray luster to the last hours of light, and take back what we didn't know at midday we'd experience as lack, the blue summer and the dry, spiced scent of the summer woods. It's as if some cold salt god had wandered inland for a nap. You still see herons fishing in the shallows. A kingfisher or an osprey emerges for a moment out of the high, drifting mist, then vanishes again. And the soft, light, green leaves of the thimbleberry and the ridged coffeeberry leaves and the needles of the redwood and the pines look more sprightly in this cool gray air with the long dusk coming on, since fog is their natural element. I had it in mind that this description of the weather would be a way to say things come and go, a way of subsuming the rhythms of arrival and departure to a sense of how brief the time is on a summer afternoon when the sun is warm on your neck and the world might as well be a dog sleeping on the porch or a child for whom an afternoon is endless, endless. Time, thick honey, and no one saying goodbye. So that's what I have to say. And we have a few minutes for your everything, questions, comments. And if I'm going to call on you, if you don't.
Well, thank you, Maeve. I thought that was a really nice meditation. And what I did notice about the transition is what I've been noticing lately for some reason is just the pause. You know, how it just pauses sometimes, like everything just kind of relaxes in the pause. And that when I'm available to that fully, there's just kind of that scratching of the universe or whatever that sound called different things. But it's like it becomes a sound to me. Like there's just this sound, this kind of interesting phenomena that happens when my ears just kind of relax and open, and everything just kind of becomes a sound.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I noticed.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good.
Thank you. That was nice.
Well, I'll speak. I like that you told us the secret. And yeah, because I wasn't sure if I was going to mention or not what was happening tonight as I was meditating. I've done a lot of walking today and my legs are really twitchy. I mean, just really twitchy, like I can hardly sit still. And so in the meditation, I was sort of back and forth between, well, this is what is, and can I just be with that, versus, no, I really don't want this. I can't concentrate on my breath because my legs are twitchy. So when you said about just, I don't mind what happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's very simple, but it's so hard to do because, you know, in the meditation, I think I'm supposed to be, you know, focusing on the breath, and instead my legs are, sometimes I get up and walk. Sometimes I, you know, do a walking meditation. And that kind of suffices, but it was just so simple the way you said it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you. That's a very good example, because we give either there's a guided meditation and or somebody's giving direction, or we've been through training in meditation and how you do the stages of the 4 foundations and all that. But the truth is, what's happening is happening, and if your legs are twitching, then that needs to be the object of your meditation, or of your experience, because it's what's in the foreground. And we can practice trying to put certain things in the foreground, but what wins out is what is in the foreground. so that's yeah, what happens. It's good. Any more observations here?
Gabrielle.
Yes, Gabrielle.
Hi, Maeve.
Hi.
I've been in patient care since I was 12 years old. So we're in 58 years. And when I started out in a nursing home, death was death. Someone died, they're dead, death. And then I noticed about 30 years ago, people used to switch over to calling it transition.
Yeah.
Because we're so death averse in this country, no one even wants to say it. So they just say, oh, well, they went through their transition. And, I finally got used to the weirdness of that, because I've been in all sorts of cultures where death is accepted. And it's part of life. What I notice about transitions in other parts of life is I can't really move on if I'm not really done with what has passed before. Death has a certain finality to it.
Right.
That piece of my life is dead. It's over. It's done. And it kind of helps me to disconnect from what has been and really get into what is now. Kind of let it die.
And what if it, or does it ever, a trace of it ever come back in terms of a memory, or a kind of a sharp response to something, or do you know what I'm saying? You've let go of it, you've moved on?
Well, I think that things that pass away are sort of like the layers of an onion. You let it go, and then it may bounce back, and a layer comes off, and there's something different. It may bounce back, and I have to just keep letting it go. And yes, sometimes when there are pieces to it that I didn't know were still there, or undiscovered. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what's really significant about that, I think, one of the things is that, so you have the experience at the time. So say you have an experience, I don't know, when you're 20, and it's a very significant experience. And then at 50, that experience, something happens, and that you have a memory of it. What's different is you're different. You really are. You have strains of all these things in your life, but you're a different person. So allowing yourself to access your own wisdom. A lot of people get scared by memories, and so to access your own wisdom, and obviously this practice, to the extent that it's available, makes it easier then to see it for what it is. Things become sometimes much bigger than they, or different than they were when we aren't able to look at them when they arise again. Yeah.
Especially my earliest experiences of death, most people aren't working as a nurse's aide when they're 12 years old in a nursing home.
Yeah.
The early years of experiencing death were pretty shocking at times, but then you kind of get used to it, the smell of it, the look of it, the way it happens, the death, all that. But still, the way you process something when you're 12 is going to be different when you're almost 70.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that observation.
You're welcome.
Anyone else before we move on to our announcements and so on? Oh, we have to do a metta too, of course. Okay, let's do a metta. So, transitioning into metta. So we let go of whatever we're bringing into this moment. And we open our attention to the heart, to this sense of internal, to the extent it's available to us, this warmth and tenderness in the center of our chests. And we can start with just gratitude for Sangha, for being together, for the opportunity to take these journeys together. And then we move to this, these wishes that we have for ourselves. May I live with an open heart and an open mind. May whatever blocks or covers my heart and or mind be dissolved, so that through open-heartedness and open-mindedness, I may experience true happiness. May I feel healthy and strong in my mind and in my body. May I have ease and peace in my life. May I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. And may I awaken and be free from suffering. And as we let ourselves really, to the extent that it's available, open our hearts to these wishes for ourselves. We do that, and then we let these wishes spread out into this group of beings that in this Sangha, those that are here with us tonight, those that are not here but are working towards these same metta wishes. Those people that we know and love in our families and our communities, those that we don't know in our communities, all the beings that we live near, pass on the roads and the streets and the stores and do businesses, all the creatures that we share the air and the water and the earth with. We send these same wishes for open hearts, for open minds, for well-being, for peace and ease and safety and awakening. And then we send these wishes out broadly into the larger community of beings all around this earth, wishing that all beings on this earth may live with open hearts and open minds, that all the beings on this earth may have ease and peace and the things they need to survive, that all the beings on this earth may be protected from harm, inner and outer, and may awaken and be free. And then we send these same wishes out into the universe and beyond to all beings everywhere, those that are seen and unseen, known and unknown, born and to be born. May all beings everywhere be happy, be at peace, and be free. And if there's any benefit we have accrued through our practice here this evening, may we dedicate that benefit to the well-being and awakening of all beings everywhere.